Hi, it's odeean here. Today I'm having a look at Badcube's Justice Force 04 Wardog. So Wardog is a third-party take on a G1 styled Warpath figure. It doesn't really look a lot like the animation model to me. It looks more Masterpiece, so definitely it's intended to be in Masterpiece. Whether that works or not for me, I'm not quite sure yet. Zooming really close into the face there, you can see the head is done very, very well. I mean, I like this head, and from other angles, you can see that it's got that octagonal shape at the back of the head, which it does have some callbacks to the original toy, although I think the original toy, I'm going to pull out the original toy. Let's just get the original toy's head up here. The original toy is very simple, and looking at it this close, there is no real competition. I think that in my heart and in my mind, the original toy's face is more than what it actually is. But there's just, I recognize this Wardog as Warpath, but there's something about it which is not enough Warpath for me, if you know what I mean. I think I would have liked the little ring at the back with the octagonal ring to have been more pronounced, just to really underscore this is Warpath. I've got the entry point to the tank on the back of my head, the hatch, that's what it is. I've got the hatch on the back of my head. I think I would have liked that more. Now this toy does have that hatch, but it gets folded away in transformation, so that's why it's not really the hatch on the back of the head, whereas with the original toy it is actually the hatch just transforming open. This guy is not that simple, so can't be that straightforward. Just quickly comparing it with the classic / universe toy, I think Wardog does a better job at capturing Warpath's likeness than this toy does. I mean, this is a very good toy. I remember that at the time when Warpath came out, it was hard to get, and people were kind of scrambling over themselves to get 1 or 2 copies of this, including me. And at the time, I always knew, as soon as I had this in hand, that it wasn't a definitive Warpath. The head is just a little bit off. I mean, that's not the right design, and his just body proportions are a bit off too. So I'm happy to upgrade from this. He does look badass, look at that. For size, he's definitely been upgraded. The original was just a deluxe, and I mean, even at the time, a deluxe is definitely an upgrade from a minibot. But now he is a tank. He's supposed to be tough. I'm not quite sure how tough in the fiction he's intended to be, because in my mind, he's always one of those characters who wasn't the ultimate badass, and maybe that's just because he was a minibot in G1 and the toy influenced how I'm remembering him, but he wasn't in the cartoon that much, and he never had that much of a major role, and he never like rolled in to save the day. A lot of bam and pow, but not so much the one that not the linchpin of the Autobots, let's just put it that way. So making him this upgraded, bigger robot, although he looks good, I don't know how well he really fits in with the other toys that I have because of that. Just to be clear, the original G1 toy, which I still have, I've got multiples of this guy, is a pretty weak toy. I mean, look at that. Almost no articulation. The legs and feet are just this big chunk. But it had charm, and back then we had lower expectations. Now, the reason I loved Warpath as a kid was not for his robot mode, which almost never saw the light of day. What have I done? I still don't know how to transform it after so many years. Am I stupid? Here we go. It was for this. This is an awesome tank. I loved this tank. Any battle that took place in my Transformers world involved Warpath, because he was one of the few tanks I had at that time, like way back in the early days, and I just thought he looked like someone who could shoot the shit out of you from whatever turrets I would set up, or walls. He would sit on top of walls. He would sit on top of Optimus Prime's trailer and just shoot guys. So I always liked Warpath. I quite often popped him in my pocket and just took it to school with me. And even though I've sold off the vast majority of my G1, I have kept my mini-bots because I just have really good memories of actually playing with them over and over again. So I'm going to get this new Warpath into his tank mode. I'm not going to show the transformation into tank. I'm going to show the transformation back from tank to robot, because that's how it comes. It comes in tank mode in the box. But let's just do a comparison with some other robots first. This is a pretty good comparison. I've got Warpath here with Prowl. Now, before anyone calls it out, this is not an original Prowl. This is the KO. I just use the KO for my shelf display so I don't have to worry about wrecking it, and so I can snap these add-ons on without worrying about scratching it. But you can see very similar in height. Warpath is about half a head taller, but his bulk is very bulky, much more bulky than any of the Masterpiece cars. It is fitting a bit with Badcube's other offerings. Just reach up to my desk. As always, I have Brawn sitting up there, and I've said it a lot of times. I love this Brawn. I just like the way he looks. He's a thick, stocky guy. Now, I don't know whether it's Badcube just likes making thick, stocky guys, or whether it's just because these characters are supposed to be thick and stocky, but that's what they both are. Now, let me think. I've got the Huffer, and he's not so stocky. I mean, he's packed away at the moment, so I'm not going to pull him out and transform him to show him. But I think Badcube can do thin toys, because the Insecticons weren't that bulky either, to be honest. So I think it's just keen attention to how they see the character, and when they want the character to be thick, we get a thick toy, which is it's pretty good. I mean, I prefer it to be thick than anemic and thin looking, because he is a tank after all. And I guess because I mentioned Insecticons, I might as well show Badcube's Shrapnel. So don't forget, this is a slightly smaller robot, but you can see there he only comes up to the chest. And it's probably a good moment to point out that this chest piece does not condense any more than that. It doesn't go in and out. It's permanently extended. That seems like a strange choice to me. There was, just going by the transformation, it seems like a good opportunity to make it push in. Now, I'm pushing that with my entire strength. I'm pretty sure it doesn't go in. Don't ask me why, but I have Hercules for my next comparison, and that's just because Hercules was hanging around in my room, so why not show him? I can't wait to get the Toy World version of Devastator. That's why I've got it out, actually. I've been thinking about Devastator so much, but this guy is up to here. It's going to be like boom, all the way up to here when we get Toy World's new version. I can't wait for that. But back on track, look at this. He's got pretty good posability too, and these big feet do help. Although I overbalanced him a bit there, but look how big the feet actually are. It's good for holding him nice and upright. Here's the vehicle mode. As promised, I'm going to go from vehicle to robot. Before I do that, some size comparisons and just comparisons with the other Warpaths. So there's the Classics Warpath, and you can see he's an H-tank, which, depending on who you are, can garner much hatred and disgust, or some people think it's kind of cool. I generally don't like H-tanks. I think H-tanks kind of suck. But there is one exception, and that is my favorite Transformer tank of all time, Armada Megatron. I love the Armada Megatron toy. I think somewhere in my channel there's even a review of this I might have done years ago. So I'm not totally against H-tanks. When it comes to this, which is, you know, he's the original H-tank, and he's fiction-wise supposed to be that way, I'm all for it. I like it a lot. But in my Warpath, this is a no, this is yes. Now, comparing him to the G1, you can see the G1 is really, really tiny down there next to him, but they look surprisingly similar. I mean, just look at that. You can see up here what is the back of Warpath's head, just popping out of the top. Now, again, that's what I was talking about before. That part I like. I would have liked it if this whole section here could be on the back of his head, just to give it that G1 feel, but it doesn't work that way. The head is kind of under there, and then it folds out, and this flips around, and this disappears into the chest. Now, this guy has no real wheels, nothing rolling down here. It's just a solid base. I don't think that it needs it. This, quite honestly, is Masterpiece. It's not a toy. Most people are not going to play with it. I don't think those little fake wheels mean anything. Even the fact that these treads you know, I wouldn't have wanted them to roll either, because it would have made things just really complicated to transform and use. So I think it's pretty good the way it's done. And as I've mentioned in robot mode, you do see a lot of these little rivets here. Now, the toy, it may sound quite solid in this tank mode, but a large portion of that solid nature is this base plate underneath, and this whole rectangle here just pops off in the transformation. So without that, it can hold its shape. Let's pull it off. I'm not doing this the right way. Let's pull it out. Get it back together. Now, so you see, it still is Warpath. It can hold its transformation without that, but it becomes a lot more flimsy, and if you push in on it like this, the tracks can start to dislodge, and it does leave this big cavity underneath. I don't care about that cavity, because who looks underneath the tank anyway? Just sitting on the shelf like that, it looks fine. I got a feeling that the reason they put this in was mainly because it was to cover up that cavity. I prefer perfect transformation, so I'm just going to pretend that this thing doesn't exist, and he's perfectly fine without it. We do have some up and down motion on this artillery at the front, and it can rotate around like this. It's got some detents, but they don't make much sound, so you probably can't hear that. Now, as far as I can tell, there is bare minimum of paint used. In fact, the only paint that I can see anywhere on this guy in his vehicle mode is just this little bit of black here and a little bit of black down here. Oh, wait a minute. And a couple of silver dots. So that's good, because there's nothing to scratch off. So that means this guy is, storage-wise, pretty durable for when you want to put him away. The transformation. All right. I'm just going to do it how I feel. I'm not looking at the instructions. I got a good idea. I've done it a couple of times. First, I'm just going to pop all these little bits and pieces off and fold what I can out of the way. Now, this up here, it's going to detach from its little tabs in there. Now what? Now the front, I'm going to separate that. Now lift this up, fold these arms out, like they kind of, it's just basically untabbing everything that can tab. There's quite a few tabs, that's why the toy is so solid. And once you get him all untabbed, he's kind of a big jumble. From that mess, I'll probably start by focusing on the legs. So you can see this thigh in here. If I rotate it around, what that will let me do is just rotate all that like this, and it's almost making the leg there. Now, bring this section down, and you can see this joint is kind of extended. We want to collapse that in. This toy has a few joints like that, and I think it's a pretty bad move as far as transformation goes, because this one is easy to access, but some of the others are not so easy to access. This thing here, it's going to fold up like this and push in. So you see it's just gone in line with the treads in there. So there's one foot. Now, the knee one is another one which is like what I just mentioned, which is going to collapse in like that. And again, that one's pretty easy to access. So I'm not complaining too much about these ones. There's one later in the shoulder which is impossible to access. It is so bad. It's so bad they even had to mention it in the instructions as a kind of safety warning. But I'll show that in a moment. Okay, so the legs, you know, pretty straightforward, didn't take too long, and it's very intuitive. So you can see I've done the bottom half of the body already. Next, we want to fold up this groin plate and just bring it around and push it in, and that's going to lock in there to make his groin. What next? Now, unpeg this section like this, and you can see in here, or if I hold that up, there's a metal bar. This is a bit risky actually. You want to be careful or you might snap those off. Spread them apart like that, and again, I find that to be slightly dodgy kind of transformation, simply because the plastic is very thin here, and to be putting the torque on this, the twist as you slide it could cause trouble. So without care, I think that will not survive. Next, you want to get this plate and swivel it around. So it's got to rotate 180 degrees. Kind of wants to get stuck on things. Once you've done that, you can just forget about that for a moment. And now, here's where it starts to get a little bit problematic. So I've got the track there, which I'm going to unpeg. It's just going to be free roaming in here. Now, this is a bit hard. This panel here, it's connected to the elbow joint, and you've got to push it down, but it's really hard, and I don't know if I can even do it on camera, to be honest. Okay, maybe I just wasn't trying hard enough. So there you go, that's the second elbow joint. And this is where it gets to pretty much the worst part of the transformation, and I mean, there's no easy way to show this. If I hold it up like that, you can see that there's this black connecting piece in here. It's a double joint, and it has to slide upwards like that, which I just did, and I don't think you can even see it, but this slid upwards, and then it has to rotate out. So you can see I've just rotated out of the cavity a little bit, and then let's get some light happening in here. Alright, it just won't show. Then it has to rotate back in the other way. Which it doesn't want to do. And you can see my fingers can't even get into that space just because I've got normal size fingers for a man. They can't fit in there. But yeah, I snapped it back the other way. So you can see it's starting to bend the other way now. Now what happens is it gets to this point, and then there's a peg that goes inside of that section underneath the screw. And you've got to slide it back down onto the peg, which is done now. And to you on camera, that probably looked like I did almost nothing, but it is very, very hard to get it into that right spot. And it makes transforming this to robot difficult, but actually back to tank, it is really, really hard, and it makes you never want to do it again. So just that one joint, as far as I'm concerned, screws the whole thing up for me and just ruins the fun of the transformation. So although it's good looking in both modes, I don't want to do the transformation. It's just really a pain. I've pulled this arm off to show what I mean. So this part here, this slides up to get over that peg. You can see underneath it, there's a peg stuck inside of it. The whole thing actually slides up a little bit. But the problem is, it's so tight and there's no way to get it. I actually put a little piece of metal in there and pried it up. Now, on the inside, if you can just see the part there that's catching the light, that's a stress mark in here. That's a white stress mark where the rod of plastic that it screws into is probably going to snap off eventually. So this is the final time I'm going to be transforming this toy. He's never going back into tank mode. And you might say, well, just leave it. Why even lock that in? Well, the reason to lock it in is that the pivot there is flimsy, so the arm will never hold a pose. This ball, when it goes in its socket, is pretty sturdy and it can hold good poses, but without the other two parts of the joint being locked in, the arm just flops around. Now that the arms and shoulders are done, we're going to grab this top piece and split it apart like so, just to give a bit of clearance. That's going to allow the head to be flipped around and then bent up for the robot mode. Now this isn't going to go back the same way that it was. It's going to go kind of there's two peg holes at the front, and that's what I'm aiming for, but it's just a little bit tricky. That's it. They hit a solid point there. So now that tab in there, that peg in there, and that's it. Do the other side. Peg and tab. Oh, upper body is almost finished. You want to get this out of the way a little bit. And you can see at the back there's this black piece of plastic. It's going to lock in like so. And then this red thing plugs into the back just behind the head. And it's up to you where you're going to put the grey. Now, I try to angle the grey up just over that pin. I mean, it's not a definite spot. It has no definite spot. But if you kind of squeeze it together like that, it clasps in the right spot. So that brings Warpath all the way back to where we started. An awesome looking robot. Now, you'll see, I didn't mention before with the arms with the posability, but they can hold all the way out. And that bit that I was getting at before that has that lock, without doing that lock, the arm won't do this. Like, you can't hold a pose like that. It'll just flop straight back down. So, but with all my prying it in and out and trying to show the transformation, I have actually loosened the ball joint now, which is kind of annoying because when I'd only transformed it once or twice, it was tight and just all the messing about has not been healthy for it. So yeah, as I said, he is staying in this mode permanently from now on. My final thoughts. I like this toy a lot. I mean, as a toy, I feel like it's really awesome. So he is a great looking robot in pretty much every respect except for this floating tank track at the back of his forearm, which I can overlook because other features are pretty good. He's got an awesome hand weapon. I mean, I forgot to mention this earlier, but he really securely holds this blaster and it just looks fantastic. I'm not quite sure why it bends like that. Maybe it's just an alternate way of holding it. His face sculpt is good. All these little rivet details, I can appreciate them. The tank details all look spot on. It's a fantastic toy, but this is not my definitive Warpath. That's, I guess, what it comes down to. And the reason I say that is, for Masterpiece for me, I really need my Masterpiece to look like the on-screen appearance of the character. And Warpath just didn't look this realistic as robot mode. His robot mode was much more simplified, and like the greebly bits, the tank bits, they kind of just disappeared into his cartoon robot form, and this guy doesn't do that enough. That's not a criticism on the toy or the transformation or the design. I think this is just awesome, but I'm still waiting for a Warpath. I mean, I say waiting, but you know, I don't spend my days thinking about Warpath. He wasn't my favorite character, but I'm still waiting for a Warpath that looks more on-screen accurate than this guy does. It might not happen because, I mean, Warpath's a popular toy with Hasbro, but we haven't really got a lot of third-party Warpath. But for now, it will do. It's pretty decent. One thing I didn't show before as well, which I'm just remembering now, is that this piece that comes off from the transformation can be popped onto his hand and used as a shield. I think that's pretty lame. It does just kind of hold on like this. If you are actually playing with it, maybe that's good in some kind of play sense, but I don't think I'm going to be playing with it. And for display, I don't want to display it with this big shield here. Maybe if it had some stickers on it or something that give it idea of what it is, like a riot shield. But for my money, I think I just put that aside in robot mode. But price, what did I pay? I got a good deal with this. Normally, if you go to BBTS or Chumangmang or somewhere, it's plus 100, so 115 say. But what I paid, I think, was about $70, and that's because I bought it off some guy over in Israel, and it was used. I took a risk. I thought, you know, used third party, is it going to be good? It was mint. I'm telling you, in the box, there is not a damn thing wrong with this figure. Box, the cards, everything perfect. So I got a fantastic price, at that price, or even at 100 plus, I think I can recommend it. So if you want to pick up a Warpath, he's out now. Go out and get him. I don't think you'll regret it. I like mine quite a bit. Thank you for watching. That's my video review of Badcube's Justice 404 Wardog, aka Warpath. I'm odeean. Thanks for watching.